أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. Please recite as-salawat. Respected listeners, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the spring of this year, something interesting happened in Rockville in the state of Maryland in the United States of America. A group called Moms of Liberty, that is a group of conservative Christians, organized a demonstration outside the headquarters of a school system. And they wanted to stage a protest against the course curriculum that was going to be introduced in their schools, and that curriculum included material that is contrary to the Christian beliefs and ethics, not in line with that. So they staged this demonstration, and this group is considered extremist, designated as extremist by some body in America. And traditionally, this conservative Christian group is seen as Islamophobic, Islamophobes. They're anti-Muslims. But something very interesting happened, that those Christian moms, as they stood there protesting, they rubbed shoulders with hijabi Muslim women who had come to join them in that protest. Because these two enemies, traditional enemies, now had a third entity that is common enemy: the woke people. The woke. And I will tell you what is woke, those who do not know, but I'm sure you have heard about wokeism and woke people and going woke. In simple terms, the very, very liberal people, the left-leaning, the far left, if I may say, but woke is more than that. I'll talk about woke, what it is. So, the conservative Christian people, and also the conservative people in general, who are Christian or not, are nowadays somehow aligning with some Muslims, forming alliances. And that incident or that thing, that protest was not the only such event. There have been several events in California. Now I'm talking about the United States. And this new alliance is forming between some Muslims, not all, but some Muslims, and the far-right people or conservative people. And recently when I went to Norway, and I had chats with my old friends, and we had communal elections coming. We just had communal elections, so we're talking about who to vote for, and some friends I spoke with, and they told me that this was a debate going on among young Muslims in Norway, and they have become sick and tired of left and center-left and red-green, and they're considering moving more towards center and center-right, because of the whole woke movement, because they feel like the values of the woke people, the liberal people, are being shoved down their throats and being imposed onto them. So they need some partners, allies, And those allies, and those people, the conservatives, they also need allies. The more the merrier, the more support they have. And also in terms of politics, they need more votes. And Muslims traditionally used to vote for the left. So now there is this right on one hand, and there is left on the other. As you know, the topic of today's lecture is walking the minefield of alt-right and ultra-woke. So I'm going to unfold these terms for you, but just before I start the lecture, now it's still introduction going on, and we have now 39 minutes left. So nowadays, we are being bombarded with, especially the younger brothers and sisters who spend a lot of time online, on different social media platforms, are being bombarded with different ideologies and different ideas. And they're being affected by it. And believe me, when we look at those different ideas coming from the right, the far right, the center left, far left, it's a minefield. And we have to walk that minefield without hurting ourselves, having proper tools and having proper understanding of what we want to do, what our God, what our religion, what the Ahlul Bayt want from us. And we all know what Allah wants from us. He wants us to be mu'tadil. What does that mean? He wants us to be moderate. La sharqiyah, la gharbiyah. It's the Quran. No right, no left, take the moderation, take the course of moderation. So that's why I've chosen this topic, and it's a vast topic and broad topic, and I'm gonna just try and scratch the surface a little bit, basically. So there is this alt-right, which is a short form of alternative right, because far right, there used to be far right people, xenophobes, Islamophobes, and all that. But alt-right, what is alt-right? Alt-right are those people who have similar views, like the far right, very conservative people, but they operate mostly online. And now, this came from the United States, this term and this organization of the alt-right people, but now it's pretty much an international phenomenon. Pretty much international. It all happens online, and they share very provocative views against racial and gender equality. Basically, it is a definition. They share conservative views against racial and religious and gender equality. So this is how it is defined, the alt-right movement. They do not have any leaders, but there are many people working online in different forums and stuff. So that's alt-right. And then there is ultra-woke. They're the extreme woke, who are the extreme opposite of those people who want all sorts of equalities, and they want to blur the boundaries between even men and women. Even dissolve the boundaries between men and women. This is just an example, and there are many other things. So we have these two extremes, and our younger brothers and sisters, and especially brothers, and this is what I'm going to talk about, they have been very active in this minefield. So what I'm going to do during the next 36 minutes or so, this was a longer introduction today, which should tell you that how complicated this subject is. Very quickly, I'll tell you what does woke mean, what is its origin, and what does alt-right, a little bit more definition of these terms. And then I'll tell you that there are three areas in which the points of view of the alt-right and the ultra-woke their differences are very prominent. There are several areas where they disagree, then they really, really vehemently disagree, hate each other, but there are three areas where their differences are very prominent. Climate change, gender roles, masculinity and feminism, and racism. These three areas. I'll briefly talk about climate change very briefly. Then I'll focus on gender roles and how our younger brothers and sisters are being affected by different ideologies. And I'll briefly touch upon racism. And in doing so, I'll also do some collective self-reflection, inshallah. And then in the end, I'll take a look at history and recite a eulogy, inshallah. But before I proceed, please recite a synchronized and loud salawat. So, woke. Let's take a look at woke. What is woke? The term woke has been used very frequently on social media and even in mainstream media recently, during the last 2-3 years or so. But the term actually has its origins in some movements in 1940. 1940, the term was first, in 1940s, about racial equality and the rights of black people in the United States. So it has origin in that movement. But during the last couple of years, it has become synonymous with everyone who cares about injustices in the society, whether it is environmental injustice, whether it is racial injustice, whether it is gender inequality, pay gap, and all those sorts of things. Such a person is woke. Such a person is not asleep in a way. Is woke, cares about it. And someone gave the example of Neo in Matrix. When Neo wakes up and comes out of the Matrix, so they say that is like being woke, waking up. And ironically, the alt-right people blame and say the ultra-woke people that they are in the Matrix. They are in the Matrix. And they use these terms in something called manosphere. What is manosphere? Manosphere are different social media platforms where many men go and exchange ideas and express their frustrations, mostly against women, mostly talking about misogyny, expressing misogynistic views, and conspiracy theories. So this is what these people do in the manosphere. And it started with some bitter, frustrated, young, white men in America. But recent research shows that Middle Eastern men are full. This manosphere is full of Middle Eastern men. And not only that, I'm telling you that many younger brothers, and probably some sisters, but I'm mainly now talking about brothers, of Shia community living in Europe or America, I am sure they are part of that manosphere. And even if they are not, they have similar ideas. And I have friends who have similar ideas. I have friends who have similar ideas. And it has long, far-reaching repercussions, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So this is what's going on online, right? Now, of course, misogyny sounds like a very abstract term. What is misogyny? Anyone, one person can say this is misogynistic, and the other person might say, no, it is not at all. It is subjective how you look at things. But so this is what is going on. And then the ultra-woke people, of course, completely against misogyny, completely rejecting those conspiracy theories, and so on and so forth. So how do we navigate through it? As I said, many men. And I'm sure some sisters are also drawn towards that manosphere, because there are some women who like that sort of stuff, misogynistic stuff, conspiracy theories. And there are also some brothers who are leaning more towards the woke. and the left, because they think that there are injustices against women, and there are way too many conspiracy theories out there, and we want to dispel them, and we want equality in our communities, and so on and so forth. So as I said, there is no generalization here. Some people are that way, some men are interested in that, some women are interested in that, some men and women are interested in that. Now, as I said, 3 areas where their differences become very, very prominent. First, climate change. You hear a lot about climate change nowadays and the energy policy of the UK. And my bread and butter is this. So I'm not going to get carried away. I'm going to speak about it only 3-4 minutes or so and then move on to the next. You see, the poster girl of the woke movement when it comes to the climate change is who? Who is the poster girl? Yes, yes. Yes, Greta Thunberg in Swedish. That's her real name. In English, you say Greta Thunberg. So I know there is a Swedish diaspora here. They would know her real name is Thunberg. So she is and nothing against the girl. She's a girl. She's sincere about this. She want to bring about change. But this is how heroes are made, poster boys and poster girls are made. With all due respect, and I appreciate her enthusiasm and sincerity, but she is no expert on these issues. And then she comes, and there are many young people who join her, and then there are movements like Just Stop Oil, and they glue themselves to the ground, and they invade something as sacred as ashes, something as sacred as Wimbledon, to make a point. That is the extreme version of that woke ideology when it comes to energy and climate change. And they want all oil and gas activity to stop here and now, which is not practical at all. And I'm not getting into the technical details. It's going to bring about disastrous repercussions and ramifications. And this is simply not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. Then there are those right-wing people who are climate change deniers. They deny it outrightly, and they say this is a conspiracy theory of the woke. It's a conspiracy of the woke. And I know many brothers, and I don't know about sisters, are leaning towards that when it comes to climate change, which is a scientifically proven fact, but they still say it is a conspiracy. And then the woke are indoctrinating our children when it comes to energy and climate change and sustainability in such a way. As I said, this is my bread and butter. They're indoctrinating our children in such a way that I met a little girl, a Muslim little girl in one of the European countries, and she felt guilty when she wanted to buy something. New clothes. She said, I do not want to buy new clothes because it requires electricity, water. If I buy new clothes, I am contributing to the climate change. And this indoctrination is happening in Europe, maybe parts of America as well. So I told that little girl what I recited in the opening sermon, a part of verse number 31 of Surah Al-A'raf. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. And eat and drink, but do not be excessive. Indeed, Allah does not love those who are excessive. So use the bounties of nature, but in a responsible way. This is the middle ground Islam wants us to take. Not driven by this hedonistic desires and buying a new mobile phone every other month and new clothes every other month and collecting all sorts of designer clothes and things and cars and all that hedonistic lifestyle. Islam does not approve of that. Islam is not against becoming rich. Islam is against israf. and that hedonistic lifestyle. So this is my message for my younger brothers and sisters. Never feel guilty if someone tries to indoctrinate when it comes to climate change and sustainability. Tell them, my religion says Allah has created everything for you, human beings. You are the custodians of the creation of Allah. Use it wisely to your benefit. So this is the middle ground when it comes to climate change. Of course, inshallah, some other time we'll get into the details of energy and climate change if I got the honor and opportunity to speak, and if there is an interest. So second point, gender issues, gender roles and responsibilities, the notion of masculinity and feminism, the role of a wife, very, very complicated and sensitive theme. Very complicated and sensitive theme. And you know, I see a trend growing among young Muslim men. I see a trend. I have friends, as I said, that they are developing resentment towards women. They are developing resentment. I was in one of the Western countries conducting a Q&A session, of course at a Shia congregation. And when I started to talk about women's rights in Islam, the rights that Sharia grants to women, and I said that, you know, she can work, but the money she earns is hers. She doesn't have to share with you. If she chips in, it's nice. It's a nice thing that she does. It's her money. You are supposed to provide for her. Her money is her money. If she chips in, okay, nice. Thank her. She does not have to do the household chores according to the Sharia. She does not have to help your parents. I'm not saying that she shouldn't. So don't jump to conclusions. Does not have to. When I said that she can even charge you for money, she charge you money for breastfeeding your child, the child you both of you have together. So that was the tipping point. Some brothers said, so you are telling us she can just sit home and enjoy life? I heard bitterness and frustration in the tones and words and intonations of those brothers. And I have friends who had failed marriages. And because they ended up having a bad marriage, it didn't work out. And when the marriage ended, they immediately started talking about Jordan Peterson. They started talking about Jordan Peterson. Now, I should have given a disclaimer. I'm going to mention some names, but these are my personal points of view. KSIMC, World Federation has nothing to do with it. These are all my personal points of view. And Jordan Peterson is a learned man. He's a professor, and he has changed people's lives. We have to be very, honest and just. But he has certain ideas that appeal to young, bitter, frustrated white men initially, who have felt that they have been disenfranchised, and women have got a lot of power and emancipation in Canada, in America, in Britain, in Europe, in Scandinavia. Now, of course, women in Scandinavia are much more emancipated than here or in America or anywhere else. And I have friends from Scandinavia who feel very much disenfranchised. So I am not really getting into the details of the points of view of Dr. Jordan Peterson, but he's the darling of Muslim men nowadays. And another darling, tell me the name. Who is the other darling? You should know. Andrew Tate. There are two darlings of Muslim men nowadays. Two darlings. Because Muslim men probably, and I'm judging them now, probably feel the need to have a white Anglo-Saxon man to fight their battle. Because if it came from a mullah of Pakistani origin or Iraqi or Iranian with a beard, they'll say, they are misogynists anyway. We need some white Anglo-Saxon cool man to speak on our behalf. And they found them in those two darlings. And if your hero is Andrew Tate, and this is what you think is masculinity, I urge you to carry out a reappraisal of your choices. Reappraisal of your choices. Is this the masculinity you want? Where it's all about being alpha male? And I wish I had the time to go into the details, but those who are into this, they know what I'm talking about. Alpha male who is strong, very powerful. Women come towards him. He attracts women. Is this masculinity? And I see that sometimes Muslim scholars also want to implicitly and sometimes more explicitly talk about these things, because this is a masala that sells very quickly. This is a masala. Churan. You know what is a churan? That's what sells very quickly. We need to understand. And then Jordan Peterson, for example. This brother who had marriage. I have a friend, and he didn't have a good marriage. And he was a fan of Jordan Peterson as well. I recently met him. That witty man who said we are all crazy. You remember? And I told you about a friend of mine. He told me he's a convert to Islam. So he said when he was interested in his early 20s, when he was becoming interested in Islam, the first thing that attracted him towards Islam, made him interested in Islam, was Islam's misogyny. Can you imagine that? He was attracted because in Islam, women were subservient to men. Try to understand the psyche of men who are living in Scandinavia or other countries or any community who feel like they are being oppressed by women. He said that was the first thing I became attracted to. He says, but now I have become mature. And now I have learned, I have knowledge. I take distance from that. Islam is not a misogynistic religion. He said that. But still I see many people, the takfiris are insisting that Jordan Peterson is Muslim. He never said, I am Muslim or I am trying to become Muslim, but they say he's Muslim because for them, Islam is all about being strict. And I'm again saying, one has to look at the works of, because he's not like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate one can very quickly criticize because he's a refined man. One has to look at his points of view in depth and then criticize. So I'm not really criticizing his points of view now. But I'm giving the general impression I have is that it's usually frustrated, bitter men who immediately turn towards that because he has some appeal for them. So I say, and that includes women and men are different. Women, for example, the gender pay gap is something that they don't believe in, that this is a reality. Gender pay gap, they say, no, what's the deal? What's the big deal? But there is a reality that women are getting paid less in Europe, in America, for example. Now, this was brothers. What about sisters? Some sisters, as I said, are more prone to leaning towards the woke side. Also as a reaction to perhaps they think that they're not getting their rights, the rights that they should have got. And they're prone to moving more and more towards the left. But there are also some sisters who use and abuse the system. I have friends who had failed marriages and the sister is using the social welfare and the loopholes in the system so that she can delete all the bonds between the father and the child. Such a zulm. It didn't work out, okay. But you don't have to be zalim like that, and it's very common. It's very common. You see? We have to become mu'tadil, take a middle course. Very important. If you think that, getting back to men, if you think that the man should work outside the house, should provide for women, women should sit at home and be subservient, and then man should come home and shouldn't do anything at home, you are completely mistaken. Our role model is Aliyul Murtada. He worked hard in the fields, in the gardens, fought battles. When he came home, he should have just lied down and say, okay, I've done enough, now you do all the work. What did he do? Sitting there sorting pebbles out of pulses. Those people who have this notion of toxic masculinity, they will say, Ali was too soft, weak man sitting at home sorting out pebbles and pulses. When the Holy Prophet saw that, he said, if a man helps his wife in household chores, Jannah, he's going to deserve. Jannah, paradise. And I paraphrase, these are not the exact words. And you'll say, okay, she should work from 8 to 4, come home and then serve me, and I'll lie on the sofa and munch on crisps and watch football. And this is my masculinity. This doesn't work this way. And then there are people who are affected by that manosphere and those right-wing ideologies. Muslim men, they say, this notion that women are oppressed is wrong. It's really overblown, out of proportion, because men are also oppressed. Okay, I say maybe men are oppressed. Men are oppressed in America, in Canada, let's assume. But you can't make a generalization. Do you know how many women are exploited by their husbands? How many men have come from other countries, used their spouses, got the citizenship and then kicked them and ran away? I don't know how many I have seen these cases. And also physically abused their wives. And you're telling me that this oppression of women is a myth. How many men are oppressed that way? How many men are exploited that way? We have to be just. The problem is that we are hypocritical people. We are hypocrites. We want our daughter-in-law to be a slave, and we want our son-in-law to also be a slave. You got it? Our hypocrisy. We are hypocritical people. Be just. Be just. Gender issues. And as I said, woke people, now we have a challenge that they are trying to dissolve the boundaries between men and women. And that is worrying for many people. That is really worrying for many people, for the conservative people, for conservative Christians, also for Muslims. Now, I can understand that in a multicultural, secular society, if someone says, I don't identify as a man or a woman, I don't want to be put into a box, okay, please pay attention to my words. In a secular, multicultural society, if someone thinks that way and does not want to be put into a box, okay. But what about this, that there shouldn't be any boundary between men and women? It should be imposed on everyone. That is a problem. So this is an okay stance. If the right people or alt-right people or right-wing people have this stance, it's okay. We can agree with them. Okay. But we have to look on case-by-case basis. We can definitely agree with some of the woke people, some of the right people, because, yeah, it's possible. But we have to always keep track of what our religion says, what and we do not have to let anyone exploit us or use us. Like the left used us for votes, now right is going to use us for votes. And the Amir al-Mu'mineen said, Kun fil fitnati kabnil laboon. Be like a camel's baby in times of fitna, so that la zaharun fa yurkab wala dar'un fa yuhlab, which it does not have strong back so that one can ride on it. It doesn't have udders so that one can milk it. We are being used and exploited by right, left, and center. We have to be very careful about it. Because I see that some of our younger brothers and sisters are also promoting all these ideologies of the far right or the left, without thinking, without being critical. You are better off promoting the quotes of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Learning about the Islamic point of view when it comes to gender roles and responsibilities, which we don't take the effort, but we'll spend hours and hours listening to our favorite influences, right-leaning or left-leaning. And then the third thing, which I do not really have time to go in depth with, is the racism. One thing that we hear from the right, alt-right people is that white supremacy is also blown out of proportion. If I may say, I paraphrase. Some of them outrightly deny that there is white supremacy. That there is no white supremacy, which is a slap into the face of black people in America, for example, or many immigrants. Because we all know, and the research proves, that there is an issue of white supremacism and white supremacy. But they say, no, there is none. So if you are becoming influenced by their ideas, slowly, 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 maybe you're also going to start to believe there is no white supremacy. Because I have become successful somehow, because they talk about individual responsibility instead of blaming everything on racism, which has some merit in it. I can understand that. We have to take individual responsibility, but you can't say that there is no white supremacy. We can't say that there is no racism. So this is one thing. But collective self-reflection, talking about racism, it's easy to say that there is white supremacy. What about our racism? Lighter skin supremacy, for example. We are so racist, that we cannot even accept. We have internalized racism to a degree that when we even talk about the Sahaba, we show that racism. Let me give you the example. Bilal. Look at the intonations and the words we use. Bilal, look how far he reached spiritually, despite being black. Despite. This despite is despicable. Despite. And similar intonations we use for Joan. I wish I could take a critical look at the story of Joan. The kind of words that are used. And I am not quite sure how authentic that story is. When we look in the Maqtal, for example, story of Joan does not appear in Abi Mikhnaf, to the best of my knowledge. It does appear in Al-Lahuf by Sayyid ibn Tawus. In some sources it is, in some it is not. But the kind of sentences I see, and today I read on an authentic, relatively authentic Persian website, and referring to a book called Maqtalul Hussein. The kind of sentences that appear, I have a hard time believing that this is authentic. When Joan was not allowed, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not allow Joan to go into the battlefield, so he said, Chehream siyah, wa najadam past, wa jismam buye bad. This is a man who has, if I may say, I don't know. Does not sound like a very confident man. You understood. It's Farsi, very similar to Urdu and Gujarati and stuff. I have a black face, and my body smells bad, and nejadam past. Nejad means ethnicity. Past, low, inferior. And he says, that's why you're not allowing me to go into the battlefield. So I spoke to a teacher of mine. He said, look, he said it. Imam Hussein did not say it. I said, of course, Imam Hussein would never say that. My problem is with what he said, whether he said it or not. Whether he said it or not. And then the words are written, Man liyaqat nadaram ke khune man ba khune shoma amikhte shavad. I don't have the ability, the quality that my lowly, inferior blood is mixed with your blood. Because when we both are killed, the blood is mixed. The words are like that. I don't remember exactly Persian words, but these are the key words are these. So, ijazat dahid be jang ravam. Allow me that I go to fight and then rusafid shavam. And I turn into a white-faced man. And my smell disappears and I get good smell in my body. وَالنَّجَادِ man buzurg shavad. And my ethnicity is also elevated. These are the words. I don't know. Maybe some teacher can teach me. I have hard time accepting it. That someone who spent many years with Abu Dharr Ghifari first, then the Amir al-Mu'mineen, then Imam Hassan alayhi salam, then Imam Hussein alayhi salam, one who is supposed to be, despite being an African slave, okay. He was working hard, he was not really sitting and learning in the mosque like the other people, probably, we don't know. Although the A'immah kept slaves to teach them the religion and then freed them. The only reason they kept slaves was to train them, educate them. Someone who has spent so much time with the Ahlul Bayt does not even understand the values of Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. Khutbah Hujjatul Wada. We always quote, which is a marketing tool for us. It's a marketing tool. Black man has no superiority over white, white has no superiority over black. That marketing tool used. And then psychological exploitation of the audience. Now you cry, oh slave, I'm black, please allow me. I refuse to shed tears on this kind of psychological exploitation. And again, maybe someone will say, you have no knowledge, this is authentic. Okay. If it is, please do some research, present it to me, prove it to me that this is authentic, and then let's talk about it. Yeah, sure. I'm not a historian, I'm raising a question, but different words are found in different. Maqtalul Hussein is not an original source book, for example. So these are the things that are found. We need to be critical. We need to be critical. But the problem is that in most Muslim societies, in particular Middle East, diversity and inclusiveness, equal citizenship, and all these luxury problems don't exist. They don't even think about it. They don't. It's not an issue. They just can't. They say, what is the problem in this? They can't see the problem even. That's the thing. We have to be critical and we have to be brave. And I thought whether I should talk about it or not, because anything can be very quickly misconstrued or misunderstood, but this is not aqaid. This is not a Quran. We can discuss history and take a critical look at it. The time's up. What I want to talk about today is just a few sentences about Our Lady. Just a few sentences. Sayyida Zainab Salamullahi alayha. Just give me a couple of more minutes. Something very important I want to tell you. Something deep, beautiful, profound that moved me. When Our Lady was brought to the court of Ibn Ziyad, the most accursed man, the scum of the earth, he looked and pointed at Our Lady and said, Alhamdulillahi alladhi fadahakum wa qatalakum. All praise is due to Allah who disgraced you, who killed you, and who failed your efforts. When she heard that, she looked back to that tyrant into his eyes and she said, Alhamdulillahi alladhi akramana bi nabiyyihi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. All praise is due to Allah who has honored us with his messenger, final messenger. And then she said something very, very deep. I want you to pay attention. These masaib contain fadail, what I'm going to say. And then she said, وَطَهَّرَنَا مِنَ الرِّجْسِ تَطْهِيرًا. She said, and he has purified us from all impurities. She included herself. وَطَهَّرَنَا مِنَ الرِّجْسِ. Perhaps she's trying to tell us, although I'm not officially among the 14 infallibles, I'm not officially among the 5 holy infallibles, no one can be like Fatimatu Zahra salamullahi alayha, who is Ismatullah al-Kubra. But still, I have this tahara. I don't have those impurities of shirk, impurities of despair. I also touched upon it yesterday. I also have a level of isma, which she had, because her aql was at such a level. And then she said something. إِنَّمَا يَفْتَضِحُ الْفَاسِقُ وَيَكْذِبُ الْفَاجِرُ وَهُوَ غَيْرٌ مِنَّا. Indeed, the one who is disgraced is the fasiq and fajir, the criminal, the sinner, and we are not those people. We are not those people. Then this accursed man became so angry that according to some books of Maqtal, he wanted to kill Sayyida Zainab Salamullahi alayha. And there was a man sitting in his court who said to Ibn Ziyad, You want to kill a woman? Shame on you. And then he did not kill Sayyida Zainab Salamullahi alayha. But you know, the Ahlul Bayt wouldn't stay in Kufa for too long. They wouldn't. Soon they have to depart. Depart towards Sham. Sham, the real home of tribulations, where stones will be hurled at them, where burning wood will be thrown onto them, where people will bully them and hurl insults at them. And they were taken to Sham, a long route from village to village, from city to city. And you know in which condition they were brought? In Ziyarat al-Nahiyah it is written, Subiya ahluka kal-abid. Your Ahlul Bayt, Rasulullah, your Ahlul Bayt have been taken like slaves. They have been chained and they've all been put in one chain. One metallic chain. Suffadu fil hadid. One chain. Little girls, little boys, Ruqayya, Sakina, Fatima Sughra, Baqir, and Sayyidul Sajidin, all in one chain. Just imagine the pain. One single chain. And some of them had their hands tied behind their necks. وَأَيْدِيهِمْ مَغْلُولَةٌ إِلَى الْأَعْنَاقِ. The hands have been tied behind their necks. And what? وَيُطَافُ بِهِمْ فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. And they are being paraded from bazaar to bazaar, from market to market, where groups of vagabonds would stay. And they would say things to them, bully them, insult them. And in the midst of that, the daughters of the Holy Prophet would be chained. Allah la'natullahi على القوم الظالمين ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ونحن أعدائهم أجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.